Are your crops deficient in calcium? I'm guessing they are. My guests are going to talk about that, how you can get calcium into your plants. It's basically a how-to guide for one of the most important micronutrients in your farming operation. In this episode of XtremeAg's Cutting the Curve.
It's XtremeAg's Cutting the Curve podcast, cutting your learning curve and improving your farming operation every week. This episode of the Cutting the Curve podcast is powered by Nature's BioK technology, delivering enhanced nutrient cycling, greater plant health, and elevated stress mitigation, leading to increased crop yields. Visit natures.com. And now, let's get ready to learn with your host, Damian Mason.
Hey there, welcome to another fantastic episode of XtremeAg's Cutting the Curve. I got a great one for you today. We're joined by Nature's Tommy Roach, friend of the show, awesome agronomic expert. I called him that once in an episode of The Granary, and a couple people looked at it and said, what? Anyway, he is. He's going to talk to you about one of the most important micronutrients that you probably are deficient in. Kelly Garrett says he has never taken a sample on his crops that was not deficient in zinc and in calcium. And it's not because his soil lacks calcium. We've talked about this before at episodes up at his farm. The field right behind his house has buku amounts of calcium. It's a French word, which means a lot. Anyway, he's got plenty of calcium, but getting it into the plant is the struggle. We've covered this in different angles. We're going to cover right now as a how-to guide. We're going to start off by telling you why calcium is important. Why is calcium important, and why do plants struggle to get it into their system? Tommy Roach.
First off, a little correction. Calcium, last I checked, is a macro or a secondary nutrient, not a micronutrient.
Okay.
Just thought I'd get that out of the way.
Kelly says there's actually 4 to 5 degrees. When we used to just say macro, micro. Kelly, what do you say? You say that there's the macroest of all macro, nitrogen, and then go from there.
There's the macro, you have the major macro of nitrogen. This is how a farmer thinks. It's incorrect, but a farmer thinks you have nitrogen, then you have phosphorus and potassium, maybe sulfur. Then the third level, you're going to have sulfur, and they'll talk about boron, they'll talk about zinc. That's it. Then the fourth level is everything else. I have gotten, so I don't even like the term macro and micro, because the implication is that the macro is more important. Yep. They are all important. And I would tell you, in my opinion, they're all equally important because we're leaving money on the table. We're not raising a good crop without them. I understand the macros, it takes more of them, but to imply that they are more important, I really struggle with.
Yeah, that's a neat one because it's almost like you diminish it by calling it a micro. Yes. But, selenium is a micro to our bodies. But I'm sure that if you don't have just the little dose that you need, then, I don't know, you get scurvy or something. I know I'm mixing things up there, Tommy. You don't really get scurvy from no selenium. I think it's a vitamin C issue. But anyway, let's get back to it. Thanks for correcting me. What do you say? Where does calcium fit in? It's under N, P, and K. Where is it right there with sulfur?
So ironically, we don't even talk much about calcium in what I would call commodity row crops, corn, soybean, wheat. Yes, you hear about it in calcium in cotton. Matt will talk about it. You hear about it in fruit and vegetable. I mean, apples commonly get bitter pit because of lack of calcium. You get blossom end rot because of lack of calcium in tomatoes and peppers. But unfortunately, you really don't hear about it in cotton and soybean. Now, is it a problem? I think it is a problem, and it's probably it's what I would call a hidden hunger. You don't see symptoms of deficiency, but if you add more calcium or figure out how to get more in the plant, we see a benefit.
Why plants need it, and then we've already established that most crops are deficient in it. Is that accurate to say most crops are deficient in it?
Yes.
In my opinion, they are.
Yeah.
Tommy has seen way more samples than I have, but in my opinion, they are.
I mean, you want to know why plants need it. Of course, we all want strong cells. In the case of corn, that uses a lot of nitrogen. Calcium and nitrogen go hand in hand when it goes to corn. And another micronutrient that is needed for calcium is boron. You go to the world's largest boron deposit in California. Guess what comes along with the boron? It's calcium. They ride together in nature and they ride together in the plant.
All right. So we've talked about this before. Yeah, Matt Miles says he's never taken a cotton sample that wasn't deficient in calcium, etc. Why is it so difficult to get calcium into the plant?
Well, so you need to go, I guess, to 101 and look how it travels or doesn't travel. Not very mobile in the soil, travels by mass flow. If you look at the current drought monitor or the NASA version, which is the GRACE shallow underwater index, you will notice that there's lots of areas in Nebraska, Kansas, northern Missouri, Iowa, northern Illinois that are the ugly shade of brown and red, which is not very nice. So we're already starting out in large segment of the corn growing areas that are.
Are you talking about the corn is this color or the soil is this color? What are you talking about?
The drought.
Oh, okay.
He's talking about the drought monitor map.
The drought monitor. Well, I've never heard of a gray Scheller index. You're getting a little bit over my head here.
That's the NASA version. There's like the Nebraska, which is the drought monitor, but then there's another one that's the GRACE shallow soil, water, underground, whatever.
Sure, right. A lot of people just refer to it as a drought map, but thank you for trying to make me. It's one of those Texas Tech things. I want to make you feel dumb because you don't know the GRACE Scheller drought map. Simplify.
There you go. So we're already starting out in a somewhat of a dry pattern. And last time I checked, you start out dry, and it's not going to get any better as we get into summer.
It's important, by the way, if you're depending on when you're listening to this or watching this, we are recording this on June 2nd. So by the time you hear this, the weather may be completely different. That still is not going to change the calcium thing, which is our main topic here. But Tommy's point is when we have drought conditions, what calcium uptake is even more of a challenge. Is that what I'm gathering?
Yep, I believe it is. So going back to base 101 facts, if we know calcium has a hard time moving in the soil, we know that it's already in drought conditions, then we have to use placement as a way to get it into the plant or tag it along with different organic acids or other things that aid in plant uptake. And I think that's what we're going to get into right now.
All right. So what do we do to get calcium into the plant? You're saying boron and it ride together. So is it simply a matter of making sure that I've got boron application? We know that, and Kelly and I covered this at his place, you can throw more calcium out there. That doesn't make the uptake. It's not an issue of availability. It's an issue of uptake, right?
Correct.
I mean, it's an issue of availability. It's not available in the soil. Calcium carries a double positive charge. And Tommy's correct. It's not mobile in the soil. The reason it's not mobile in the soil or available in the soil, from my perspective, my explanation is that it carries a double positive charge. It's a big, strong, aggressive ion, and it wants to get neutral, and it ties up. And so to put it in this, I can have 90% base saturation. I can see a hill right over out this window, 90% base saturation calcium, but that calcium is attached to the soil colloid. It's not available to the plant, and I always struggle with that. Why? And so every time we go across the field, we're going to add some micronutrients. We're going to add calcium. The idea that I need to split apply or spoon feed my nitrogen is a very foreign concept to me. I need to split apply and spoon feed my micronutrients because they're not available in the soil. The nitrogen is readily available in the soil for me.
Micros make, in my opinion, because I've been doing micros for a long time, micros make the world go around. And we talk about them being micronutrients, but the vast majority of the time, you can see a big influence in a small amount of micro than focusing just on nitrogen or phosphorus.
Right.
100%.
Okay, So we talk about like, and we're learning this with Johnny Varel, who's doing reduced nitrogen applications, and Kelly, who's going crazy and cutting nitrogen application down to 0 pounds of applied nitrogen, et cetera, et cetera. But I didn't know until working with XtremeAg that only about 35%, 1/3 of applied nitrogen gets into the plant, which means we're wasting a whole boatload of stuff, right? Is it that way on the micros too? I mean, you say they're really important and they're generally under represented in the sampling. Is it because we don't think about them and we're not putting them out, or is it just a matter of they're there but they're not plant available? They're existing but not plant available.
As far as my take on it, I don't think people put out enough. If you look at how people use dry fertilizer and they put in, let's just say 20, 30 pounds of zinc sulfate, is that plant root going to find those 20 pellets over an acre?
I completely agree. The idea that we would use dry micros, another foreign concept to me. The idea that the root's going to find them and take them up, and if it does find them, that they're not tied up to something else, total waste of money to me, putting on dry micros.
So, by the way, that's a really interesting thing because there's somebody that's listening right up until now, and I hope to goodness they stayed on the episode and didn't like click off and say, we got to put out more calcium. You know what? Throw out dry calcium, because the point there is it's impossible. It's kind of like, what'd you say, 20 pebbles of something across an acre. It's 40 feet from the nearest plant.
Exactly.
So the only reason
or the plant is 40 feet away from the nearest pebble, I guess is the right way to say it.
Most everybody, the only reason they're putting out calcium is to adjust pH.
Which is the total incorrect thing to do as well. A total lack of understanding in the agricultural community I apologize, Tommy, from retailers.
No.
pH is not the problem. Everybody wants to affect the pH as if we affect the pH, we're going to correct everything. The pH is a symptom of a nutritional imbalance. Correct the nutritional imbalance and the pH will fall in line. Stop trying to correct the pH. Correct the nutritional imbalance.
Interesting. And by the way, there's a whole bunch of people that came up getting their, agronomy from FFA or VOAG class or whatever that were told that, if pH has to be 6.6 or whatever, 6.4 to 6.8 or whatever it's supposed to be, and that'll take care of a whole bunch of stuff. It doesn't?
No, well, generally, if the pH is in that area, things are going to be nice. But the reason things are nice is because you have nutritional balance.
All right.
You're looking at things from the wrong angle.
All right. So you talked about Tommy Roach talked about the drought map, and that makes a lot of sense. We're not going to go in about what the drought map is called. It's called a drought map. And then we just talked about pH. Does lime, in other words, if I have the correct amount of lime, you're saying that people view that as a calcium application when in really it's not?
Yes, sort of. Yes. Because if I go, people here where I live, everybody talks about putting on lime and correcting the pH and things like that. High pH for me is a much bigger problem than low pH. Yes. Now, I know it's about that way all across the nation. Okay. And then when people go put on lime, you know what lime they go put on? The lime that is closest to them because it's the least expensive. Right. You know what the exact wrong lime to put on? The lime that's the closest to you, because the dysfunction that's in your soil is the same dysfunction that's in that lime. So you're probably potentially making the problem worse. You're definitely not helping the problem.
We did that, by the way. That's one of the best episodes we've ever done. It was with Kevin Matthews, and he said your nearest lime source is probably your worst lime source, and we covered that in an episode. It's a good episode. Does this matter about? Okay, you talked about the drought. Does it matter with soil type? Tommy Roach, does it matter if I've got Kelly soil versus Chad soil? Is this calcium thing, is it a different nut to crack based on soil type?
Calcium is calcium, and it's hard to deal with. Whether it's formulating wise in an NPK fertilizer, which is what I do, or if it's getting it in the plant, it's a booger. And there's different ways to do it. If you look at what calcium products there are on the market, and I'm talking liquid, how most people try to trick it up to help plant uptake is to add amino acids to it, to add organic acids to it, which would be fulvic or something like that. Add sugars, which could be lignosulfonate, glucoheptanate, or which is the route we've taken since we're basic in potassium acetate, is we've gone the route of already having a reacted product called calcium acetate. And we know the benefits of acetate are many, the basic carbon building block in nature. So we tag that along with calcium to help it get into the plant better, whether it's soil applied or foliar applied.
Editor's note, we at XtremeAg sat in a hotel suite in Denver and had an entire presentation by Mr. Roach about acetates. And I never felt so much like the slow kid in the back of the classroom as I did that day. I still actually, I got to be honest with you, I'm still a little bit lost on the whole acetate thing. I didn't raise my hand because I was like the slow kid and I didn't want to ask too many questions because then like Temple or somebody like say, shut up, slow kid. You know, you're getting in the way. Anyway, you know how that goes around here.
Or was it because you had 2 beers in both hands and you couldn't raise your hand?
No, well, that was probably part of it too. Anyway, that's why I came, frankly. All right, I want to remind you, if your farm operation is growing, and I hope that it is, and you're getting growth as a farmer, I want you to think about the challenges that you face and how Superior Grain Equipment's grain storage systems can help you. Superior Grain Equipment's grain storage systems are built to make your job easier and help your grain reach its full potential. From things like their gentle mix flow dryers to the durable storage, you can get the flexibility to market your grain on your time. You can visit with the experts at Superior Grain at this year's Farm Progress Show in Decatur, Illinois, or you can visit them online anytime at superiourbins.com. That's superiourbins.com. What about then the regionality of it? Climatological. You said calcium's calcium. You said soil doesn't matter. What about temperatures? Is it a harder fight for Matt down in Little Vietnam than it is for Lee up in South Dakota, or is it temperature not matter?
Well, anytime you have hotter temperatures, plant tends to shut down and doesn't want to take up anything. So Matt has a much shorter window to hit that during the day than, say, Lee does in South Dakota.
Got it.
Or even Sam in Canada.
Yeah.
And crops are different. I mean, a cotton plant needs a lot more calcium to fill out that bowl and fiber than, I'm not saying that it's not needed, but soybean doesn't take a lot of calcium at all. I mean, if you look at all the nutrients, calcium is the least that is needed by a soybean plant.
So what needs it the most? You said cotton. Cotton needs it the most?
Out of traditional row crops, I would say cotton does, yes.
And corn?
Yeah.
Got it. All right. We said we were talking about balance, and this has been Kelly's big thing. 3 years ago, Kelly's big thing was stress mitigation. Then he's moved into balance was a big thing a couple of years ago. Now he's moved into more about nutrient analysis of the crops he grows. But your thing was balance just a couple of years ago, and you mentioned it already today. And then Tommy said something about boron. What is it that I need to be thinking if I'm listening to the show about balance? Where am I probably imbalanced if I'm a normal American farmer? Where am I probably imbalanced that's harming me on calcium uptake?
I would say that you probably have more nitrogen than you need, and you're lacking all nutrients, including calcium. But calcium is, as Tommy said before, a booger to work with. And I think a lot of times it gets left out or skipped over in a foliar plan because of the difficulty of working with it. And there just aren't very many products that you can mix with other micros. I think all of them, again, the general farmer, I believe, across the Midwest is out of balance. They're heavy nitrogen and they're deficient micros. But the micros they do address are not, calcium isn't among them, because of the difficulty in working with it. And so you need to find a product that you can mix, because we're not going to add a pass. No farmer's going to go out and put on their zinc and boron and molybdenum and then come back and make another pass with calcium. They're not going to do that. And that's the reason that it is oftentimes the most left out one.
He's the only guy in that entire Garrett Land and Cattle Farm office who can say the word molybdenum. His agronomist, who is a very intelligent guy with calibrated agronomy, my friend Mike Evans, just keeps saying moly. And then finally said, what's that short for? He can't say molybdenum. Why is it so hard, Tommy?
He's from Iowa.
What's the deal on balance that, from your perspective, that I want to talk about the how-to guide on how I actually get more calcium in my plants? What's the imbalance issue that causes the calcium to be so difficult to work with?
Me or Tommy?
Tommy Roach said the boron.
Well, let's take Kelly's example. I mean, his two most limiting nutrients, calcium and zinc. How many people, we've already talked about how many people apply calcium, which I would probably say no, almost zero. I think Kelly's the only one. Almost zero in a corn soybean rotation.
Yep.
I just don't think they pay enough attention to anything other than nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur. I mean, they don't even pay attention to potassium. The ones that do deal with it the wrong way, they throw out dry potash and think that's solving a problem.
All right, how-to guide part of it. How do you get calcium into your crops? We did a short video about this in the field behind your shop, Kelly. If I remember, is that the one where we used, you did an experiment with your subsurface drip irrigation, I think. Am I right about that?
Yeah, well, we've tried to put it into the subsurface drip. It's the only fertility that is left on my planter in the in-furrow mix is calcium and zinc. And then when we're going across the field in a foliar application, the post-chem will have calcium in it amongst the other micros. And then when we get to the R stages, and we're taking the rapid soil test and the SAP test, I can't guarantee you that calcium would be in there, but I bet you it will be, because it's always one that we need to spoon feed consistently. So it's planter applied and then foliar applied with the sprayer and then the airplane. I might put calcium on potentially 5 times throughout the year. Planter, the sprayer, and the post-chem, and there's the potential to fly the plane 3 times.
And when you're flying a plane 3 times, which is getting expensive, that's a fungicide pass, and what else?
Let's address that. I don't want to call it a fungicide pass.
Because you're trying to back off of fungicides anyhow.
If I balance my crop, I'm not saying fungicides are bad. I'm saying fungicides are defense. And if I do a good job and get balance in the plant, I don't believe that I'll need the fungicide, because the plant will be healthy enough that it'll have natural immunity. So if we balance the plant, so then you want to talk about the expense. Fungicide is $30 an acre. I've turned my nitrogen down 40%. I've turned, I continue to turn down the nutrients. I will tell you that I'm raising corn cheaper. Last year we had those challenge plots at Matt Miles, because it was said that I could do what I do here in Iowa because of the soil, but I can't do it anywhere else. So we raised challenge plots at Matt's for his field day. Matt raised 240 bushel corn. I raised 240 bushel corn. I did it $50 cheaper. Don't tell me it's more expensive.
You're nodding your head, Tommy. It's the people that are driving in a tractor right now. They can't listen to you nod. Why are you nodding? You just like the idea that you did something better than Matt. Is that it?
It goes back to people pay too much attention to nitrogen. They put out too much, which throws everything out of balance.
So, Tom, Kelly just said, I put it on as much as 5 times. Somebody's listening saying, oh, I don't even go over my field that many times. Well, if you don't have a sophisticated planter, can you still put calcium on at time of planting? I'm assuming you can.
You can. Because you could use there's
you don't
different
need 2x2 or in-furrow technology to do that.
There's different products you can use. I mean, if a lot of people run phosphorus in an in-furrow or 2x2, if you are trying to mix calcium in with phosphorus, it has got to be 100% chelate, which limits it to a calcium EDTA. Now, if you're not using phosphorus, like Kelly's not, that leaves your options a little bit wider. You could use products that are maybe amino acid based or acetate based, because calcium acetate and phosphorus don't even think about it, because they will make calcium phosphate, which goes back to natural state.
That's not what you want. So, but they're not antagonistic. They just freeze each other up, tie each other up.
Yeah, exactly. They want to go back to how they were in nature. Calcium phosphate.
All right. So the person that says, I want to be able to put on more calcium because I just heard it from Kelly that I can put it on, I can figure out a way to do it even if I don't have in-furrow or 2x2. How do I do it that way? Planter box, seed treatment? I don't know. What are we talking about?
You can foliar apply it. I mean, if you look at nutrient uptake in corn, the vast majority of calcium is needed in that, we'll just say V12 to R2. I mean, it's directly tied to starch accumulation, nitrate uptake. So, I mean, at that V12, you're putting on a lot of cells, and you've got to have calcium or boron for cell stability.
One of those things that's getting flown on, Kelly, is what? It's what's in it. What's in the stuff that goes on at, you're talking July, August probably. What are you putting on?
Oh, like last year on July 12th, there was copper, manganese, iron, boron, calcium, zinc, and then there's some biological products, things like that. It depends on what the SAP test tells us is needed, and then in what amounts.
Okay. And then the person that says, I don't know if I can justify the expense to fly something on late in the season like that, you're going to tell them?
We are reallocating that fungicide spend. We're reallocating some pesticide spend. We are reallocating some nitrogen spend. We've taken all fertility off the planter. There are many people that put phosphorus on with the planter. We were one of them. Throughout extensive trials, we took all of that fertility off the planter and reallocated it to later in the season. If you would like to know my opinion on what, in my soil, what phosphorus on the planter produces, it's vegetation. It's not yield. It produces vegetation. What I put on with the airplane later in the season produces yield. I'm not telling you should spend more money. I just showed you where I spent $50 an acre less.
Yep.
Reallocate that spend to later in the season. You have to educate yourself on what your soil's producing, things like that. Just yesterday, there was a coffee shop conversation, and they said, well, we think you're crazy that you turned your nitrogen down that far. It takes 1.1 pounds of nitrogen to produce a bushel of corn. And I'm like, I never said it didn't. But why do you think you need to put it all out there? Your soil's providing some of it for free. Why don't you take advantage of that? And then reallocate that savings to that airplane pass.
Yeah, I like it.
How do you manage what you don't measure? Nobody's measuring what the soil's providing. Nobody's measuring what the plant needs. How do you manage what you don't measure? And then they want to tell me that the SAP test is too expensive. You might spend $30 an acre on a foliar app, and I could go run one SAP test for $110 or whatever it is. That an 80-acre field time serves $2,400 you're going to spend in the application on this field, and you think it's too expensive to take $110 test to validate what we need to put out there.
Tommy, I'm kind of surprised he even stopped in the coffee shop. I mean, why go there to get judged?
Puts hair on his chest.
All right. I had one of my things in my question. How do you know it's working? Well, you did the tissue sample test. Again, the person that says I need to put more calcium in, you did it through testing. Do you think that most people would just do well to figure out a way to get a foliar pass on calcium, even if they didn't do the testing? Because you can just almost blanket tell them, I'm just going to 90% chance you're deficient.
Yes, I do think that they would be doing well to just try and see what the yield is at the end. But in the tight margin environment that we're in and things like that, I always want to measure it to see. Like last year, the July 12th application that I referenced, we put on 20 ounces of a 6% copper, and we moved the SAP sample, we moved the copper like 2,000%. We probably don't need to do that. We probably could dial that back to 10 ounces of copper. You know what I mean? Something like that. So we use that SAP test to actually calibrate the product. We moved the potassium up, and this was at like VT, give or take. Okay. So we were super excited that we actually moved the potassium up 1.4%. I would rather, and that copper spend isn't a lot of money, but when we get down to the nuts and bolts of it, what if we have the expense on the copper and add a little bit more to potassium to try to even raise that a little bit more? And so I always believe that the SAP test is worth it to really dial in on what we're doing.
Mistakes is my last thought here. By the way, you want anything to conclude that, Tommy?
No. And all this discussion about other nutrients, it all fits in with this calcium topic, because I don't think people understand that calcium activates a protein pump that pumps all these nutrients into the plant, that being phosphorus, nitrogen, potassium, magnesium, boron. You go right down the list. And without available potassium, guess what? You limit your nutrient uptake of all these other nutrients that we've been sitting here talking about.
You said without available potassium, or you mean available calcium?
Available calcium.
Yeah, there we go. That's the topic is calcium.
Right.
Mistakes that someone is trying to get more calcium in plants. They understand they got this problem, and then the one thing that they're like, "Oh crap! I wish that I'd have known." Because have you ever made a mistake, Kelly? That in your effort to get calcium into your plants, have you spent some money that didn't end up giving you a return?
Yes, if you don't apply, in soybeans, when we didn't apply at the right time, because we're trying to save that pass, things like that. In corn, like the calcium that we were using was about $8 an acre. This was a couple years ago. We had a 10 bushel yield gain in corn, and that was in a 300 bushel yield environment. So a 10 bushel move in a 300 bushel environment is a big move. That was on irrigated acres. Okay. In beans, we had a 3 bushel move. So in $8 beans is a pretty pedestrian price. And I always want to have a 3-to-1 return. And we had a $3 bushel return there. But then like the cells that Tommy talks about, the cellular strength in very high yielding beans, if we don't have the cellular strength, they have a hard time supporting themselves. Yep. And so the calcium in an indirect way can lead to an even bigger yield gain there, just by supporting the plant better.
Most of the calcium that a soybean needs is in the stems and leaves. It's not in the actual bean itself.
So it does need to be applied for vegetative, because one of Kelly's big points is you can do a whole bunch of stuff that creates vegetation, but it doesn't create yield. Like that's why he said he's taking stuff off of the planter, creating a bunch of vegetation. You're just spending money at the wrong time. And
when we're talking beans, I mean, it is, I would love to deal almost 100% with in-season fertility, because you can greatly enhance your bean production just by doing everything, say, R stage forward.
Got it. All right. So if you want to learn more about this, go and check out a couple of the videos. These guys did one, and then also Kelly and I have done one, and then I know Matt has talked about calcium. So we've covered calcium quite a bit, but we're covering it quite a bit because it's that important to your farming operation. If you want to take your farming operation to the next level, make sure you come to one of our field days. We are recording this early June. I don't know when you're going to listen to it, but maybe you're going to hear this in time to go to Matt Miles, which is on June 12th. June 26th, we're going to be in Northwest Iowa at Kelly Garrett's farm. Great time always there. You can go to the XtremeAg.farm website and sign up for any of our field days. They are free to attend, and we would love to have you there. But you do have to register. In August, we're going to be at Varell's on August 5th. That's in Jackson, Tennessee. On August 7th, we're going to be in North Carolina at Kevin Matthews. August 15th, we're going to go cross the border. That's right. We're going to go up there to what might be our 51st state. We're going to go up there and we're going to check out our friend at Sam Coutue's. It's not really going to be our 51st state. We're going to go to Quebec for the first time ever with XtremeAg for the field day at Sam Coutue's. And then on August 21st, we wrap things up at our friend Temple's in Maryland. So go to the XtremeAg.farm. While you're at the XtremeAg.farm website, make sure you check out our show, The Granary. Our very first sponsored shows were sponsored by none other than our friend Tommy with Nature's. And it's a really cool show. Pull up a chair. It's real farm talk with real people about real issues from the personal to the professional. If you want to learn more about Mr. Tommy Roach and their lineup of products that can help you farm better, where do they go?
Natures.com.
Natures.com. Nachurs, natures.com. So next time, that's Kelly Garrett. That's Tommy Roach. We're talking about how to get more calcium into your plants. I heard a lot of it there. Do stuff at time of planting. You can't put it out all at once. 5 different applications from Kelly Garrett. Small doses. And all of a sudden, it keeps your plants not deficient. Is that what I heard? That's what I heard, right, Kelly?
You heard
90+% chance you are deficient in calcium. Pull some samples to see if maybe we're right, and we probably are, and we can help you farm better. Till next time, thanks for being here. I'm Damian Mason with XtremeAg's Cutting the Curve.
That's a wrap for this episode of XtremeAg's Cutting the Curve podcast. Make sure to check out XtremeAg.com for more great content. Cutting the Curve is powered by Nature's BioK. Check out Natures.com to learn more about how BioK can improve your farm's ROI.